Welcome to Resilience Rock Sales, your front row seat to rocking your sales game. I'm your host, Stacey Copas. Today's episode is brought to you by the Academy of Resilience Inner Circle. For more information, head to academyofresilience.com.au. Now on with the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Resilience Rock Sales. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Kirsty Nancarrow. Welcome to the show, Kirsty.
Thank you, Stacey.
And just to kick us off, rather than read out your bio or anything like that, I'd love if you could just share a bit about the Kirsty story with us.
Where does one begin? I live in Cairns, beautiful, tropical far north Queensland. And as we've discussed, we're both Westies. So you're currently a Westie. I grew up in Western Sydney. And my dream was always to become a journalist. So from 9 years old, that's really what I wanted to do. And that was all sparked by conversation with my grandfather, who is my inspiration for all of my writing and my outlook on life and the way I am with people. I lost him when I was 10 and he was my last surviving grandparent. So it's a long time not to have had grandparents, but nevertheless, he's always stayed with me. And at that time, when I was 9, he said something about me reminding him of Jan Event, who at the time was, one of the flagship current affairs presenters. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do, I'm going to be a journalist. And I was very fixated on that from that time. So everything I did in school and out of school was geared towards that goal. So I couldn't wait to get out of school and start my career, enroll in university, but also went for cadetships at the same time. And I got a cadetship and I thought, well, that's the end game, is being a journalist. So I went for the cadetship and I thought I'll just do the study later. I started on my local newspaper, the Blacktown Guardian, which doesn't exist anymore, sadly. But it was an independent newspaper and a great training ground. Did everything as an 18-year-old, did absolutely everything. I was the only one with a car, so I became the default photographer as well. Sometimes I was sub-editing the whole newspaper because the editor had spent far too long at the pub at lunch. So it was a really great training ground as a journalist. And then I went and worked in a political office and became a media advisor. So I got to learn the other side of how the media works from the comms side. And I've sort of switched between the two. But ultimately, my goal was to work for the ABC and finish my master's degree, did 300 hours worth of work experience for the ABC, and finally landed my first job in Alice Springs. So that's how I ended up in the centre of Australia, which I absolutely adore and I still feel like is my spiritual home. But eventually, enough Groundhog Day. I did have 2 years in London in that intervening time. So I had 10 years altogether in Alice, 3 years, and then another 7 when I returned from the UK. But there's only so many, think desert races, camel carts, bean-tail musters and murders that you can cover before you go, I need a bit of a change of scene. So in order to have some career progression and a bit of a refresh, came to Cairns for the senior journalist job over here. And that's how I ended up in Cairns. But decided a few years ago that I'd had enough of being exposed to trauma on an almost daily basis. It did catch up with me and started to feel like I should make some different choices. And I've always loved mentoring people and training. So I thought the natural progression was to start a media training business. And then that's evolved into a partnership with my very good friend, Susie Cray. And we now have a motion video training production. And I do media training and we do video workshops teaching people how to make videos on these things, which we all carry around. So that's a bunch of fun. So that's how I made my transition from journalist into businesswoman. And I'm very, very happy.
And I love that with the mobile, because that's what's been interesting. And we keep hearing now that everybody is a journalist and everybody is a media organization now, aren't they? When they've got that access to that, and also not just the access to capture, but the access to distribute instantly on the spot. So what difference have you seen that's made, I guess, to the roles of traditional journalists?
Look, it's changed. It's completely changed the model, notwithstanding all of the competition from these, citizen journalists that we have now. The actual craft itself, when I joined the ABC in 1999, it was as a radio reporter. We went out and recorded interviews on a device, which also changed 3 times while I was there, the technology. And we'd come back and we'd edit it up and put when I first moved there, we had the cart stack still, the tape within the cart stack. So I'd come back, edit my news grabs, put them on a cart stack, and they'd literally carry a stack into the news booth. And as I'm reading the news, I'm putting the next one in and taking one out. So that's where I started with journalism. And then by the time I finished up with the ABC in 2017, we were doing radio, television, online, that's just reporting. Then they added social media. So it got to the point where we were doing things like live tweeting court cases. And then they gave us a camera as well. A lot of the regional bureaus don't have permanent camera staff. And so they thought, let's train the journos how to use cameras so that they can do the occasional pickup of an interview for somebody in Canberra. Well, it soon morphed into doing your own TV packages, which I absolutely loved. I loved the creativity of not just thinking about the news gathering, but actually the gathering of the vision and the audio as well. So, by the time I finished, it was a vastly different job, and video was very much part of it. So now you'll see a lot of the newspaper sites, they have video because that's where the eyes are going. That's how they kept getting people in. So even the traditional newspaper journalist is now having to train up in how to take video on their phone so that they can give their audience a little bit of a visual as well as waiting for the printed story to come out.
Yeah, so it sounds like the timing was a good one then for you to make the leap, because around that time, I guess that's when the rise of the video content, and especially the short form video content, that's been super popular. And it's interesting when we're thinking about the audience for this podcast, and the majority of the people listening to this podcast are likely to be in a sales role. Where do you feel that video content and those sort of things can be beneficial for someone in a sales role these days?
It is so beneficial. A lot of our workshop clients are people in small business and even micro business, but also larger businesses, because video production is expensive, right? The going rate is about $1,000 per edited minute of professionally produced video. We do that ourselves, but again, the model is changing. And because we have this great technology that everybody has, the cameras improve every time the phones come out. There's no need anymore there's no need anymore to have like thousands and thousands of dollars of camera equipment or wait till you've got a budget to get professionally made videos. Yes, there'll always be a place for that. But in terms of daily connection with your customers, we can't always have a video production crew on hand to feed that content to our audiences. We're all very visual. We're all very time poor now. And like to see a quick video about something is largely going to convert people in a way that perhaps a brochure popped in the mailbox or even an ad on TV is not going to. People are seeking out that content. They want to be engaged. They don't want to be sold to. They want to get to know you. And this is what we say to some of our small business owners who are reluctant. They're like, I don't want to go on camera. I'm really afraid. I look bad. I sound bad. I'm like, you are your business and you are your point of difference. So if your clients see you, they get to know you. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You could be in a therapeutic role, you could be in real estate. If people feel like they know you, they're more likely to want to buy from you. You've established what your values are, your reputation, all of those things that if you're just authentically you on a video, seem to connect with people a lot more. Like we've tried it ourselves with content. Anytime we post something with one of our faces, even though we're a little bit embarrassed to do it as well, does so much better than seeing any other sort of content. So from a sales point of view, it's an invaluable tool. I think I've had to go to look at the statistics, but the last time I checked, it was about 89% of people actually want to watch a video before they buy a product. Now we're all into kind of trying before we buy and doing our research. whether it's booking a holiday or a restaurant or where to get our hardware supplies from, often we'll go looking for a bit of a video review or some kind of testimonial to confirm that that's the decision that we want to make and that's where we want to spend our money. So yeah, cannot stress enough that if you're not doing video in your business, you really need to be.
I like that you said people are wanting to do their research and things like that online, and I can't remember the statistic either, but it's the majority of people don't actually want to engage with a salesperson anymore. So, from what you've shared there, it's a way to, as a salesperson, still have some involvement and some influence in the process without sort of feeling like they're needing to directly call somebody or do something like that. And also the benefit of video is so great because, again, as you pop it up there and it's leveraged as well, isn't it? It's like you're not having to then do the same thing over and over again. It's like, if you're thinking about, well, what are the commonly asked questions that they're getting? And you might as well pop that up there, because if you've been asked that question, 10 times, then anybody that's at that point, any point in their buying journey, is likely to have that question or something like it. So starting to have those kind of things and looking at ways that you can use video to do that. It's almost like the heavy lifting, but it's also making the buyer more comfortable because they're not wanting that engagement as much as they have in the past. So it's good. I think it sounds like there's lots of opportunity, and as you said, it's never been easier with really basic equipment, really, to be able to still produce something really high quality, especially with the help of somebody like yourself.
And to be honest, like, we're judging content a lot less than we did for the quality as well, because we've got such short attention spans. That's why platforms like TikTok and Reels have boomed, because we want to get a quick fix. We've got a couple of minutes somewhere. Some of us are more addicted to it than others, but it's just, if you can get in front of eyeballs that way, you can have your beautiful, polished piece of content. But honestly, if you can share something that's a little bit of an insight into your day, or any products that you might have, or a bit of a call to action, or whatever it is, making someone laugh, like, that content does really well. So you don't have to sit there and agonize about scripting and that sort of thing. If you just have like a spontaneous moment that made you laugh, or a thought that you wanted to share, then it's easy enough to just pick something off your camera roll and put a bit of text over it and share it in 5 minutes. And you'll be amazed what kind of audience engagement you have. It might not be people commenting, but people will be looking.
Yeah. I think also too, as far as quality goes, because the majority of people are looking at things on their phones. So it is that small screen as opposed to on a huge monitor. Watching things on the smaller screen is a lot more forgiving than on the bigger screen as well. So I think it's just encouraging people just to test the waters, really, isn't it? And just put some stuff out there. And I guess when we're thinking about that, there's that resilience piece too, because there is always a risk if you put yourself out there that you might get somebody that has a negative comment. You might get the professional trolls that decide that you're the person to unleash on today. But, those people are never going to be your buyers anyway, are they?
They're not. And honestly, I haven't found too much go wrong with being vulnerable and putting myself out there. Like, not afraid to laugh at myself or be the first one to poke fun at myself. I'm the more serious of the partnership. My business partner's a lot more fun and entertaining, and brings a lot more personality across in her videos. But very happy to share about my journey and all of that kind of stuff, because I think, well, exactly as you said, if you weren't ever going to be my customer, then you weren't ever going to be my customer. So I'd rather just be authentic, and you either like what I do and who I am, or you don't, and you'll go somewhere else. So it's kind of refreshing to think that way, rather than trying to get everything and all of that. There's more than enough work for everybody, really. So it's something you can sort of take that pressure off yourself. And yeah, it is a bit vulnerable putting yourself out there, a bit like having your phone number or your email address out there on Google. It can go wrong for some people. It's not great, but I mean, I have not found that myself as a business owner. I tend to only get calls that are legitimate. And if I don't, then we will have ways of dealing with those.
Yeah, I think that's the name in the grand scheme of things, if it's gonna be like a fraction of 1% that's gonna happen, then, really it's worth taking the chance. And now you mentioned there about being the more serious one, a little bit about your journey. I'd just like to go back, something that you shared when you were just sharing a bit about your story in the beginning. You shared that being on sort of frontline journalism, there was that exposure to trauma on a continuous basis. Can you share a little bit more about what that was like on a day-to-day basis and the impact that it had on you?
Yeah, it had a massive impact, and I wouldn't be on the path that I am now. I wouldn't have this business journey if I hadn't been through what I had. And yeah, we tend to think about police, ambulance, fires, those first responders and their exposure to trauma. And obviously they do have that more regularly. But as a journalist, you're often there pretty soon after something's happened to bear witness. And when you do that for a long time, like when I went to university, there was no training about how to manage with coping with trauma or processing things and whatnot. I mean, when I became a journalist, the day therapy was going to the pub. I remember being asked when I was being offered my journalism job, just having turned 18. And the last question before I was given the job was, how old are you? And I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? And I said, at 18, why? And he said, oh, because we actually go to the pub every day and meet up with the journalists and the photographers from the other papers and play pool. And that's where everything gets processed. That's how people dealt with, I suppose, the stresses of the job at the time. And there's a big drinking culture around journalism. So that was my kind of introduction to how we cope with what we do, and not necessarily the healthiest way. And, even though the ABC has an EAP program and a peer support program on a daily basis, you can't be ringing somebody up every day and talking about, oh, I've just done this thing. It's part of the job. So I guess that year after year of vicarious trauma caught up with me. And I started thinking about, I just turned 40 and there was this opportunity to go for a chief of staff role, which was a new role in the office. They'd restructured how they did things. And I was like, I'm going to go for this because it's going to get me out of the newsroom, which I think is not good for me anymore. Unfortunately, I think I was too far down the path by then. I got the job, but then I had all this extra responsibility, and I was responsible for 12 people, disaster management, producing the breakfast and morning programs, managing all of the personalities in the office, and keeping bosses happy with things that the staff did not want to do, which I didn't agree with either. So you just meet in the sandwich, and you're on 24/7 because things happen. Already being on call a lot in the newsroom, but as the boss of the bureau, you're definitely on all of the time. So I didn't sleep for 5 months. I probably had a couple of hours sleep a night for that whole period, and it eats away at you. So I became a zombie and I started getting some help, and eventually I was referred to the GP, with the unwritten message, I think you should go on antidepressants. And I was diagnosed with depression, tried the antidepressants, had all of the side effects, the horrible side effects that you can get with antidepressants. Was literally clinging on for life and really not wanting to. And just had to, basically had to stop. I remember looking at my computer screen one morning and not actually knowing how to turn it on. That's how dead I was inside. That's the only way I can describe it. I was like, I'm not used to anybody right now. So yeah, I stopped. The doctor suggested I had some time off. So ended up having 7 months off, and trying to get better and just sleeping a lot in the first month or so. And it wasn't until actually I left the ABC that I finally had a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. So I knew about the depression and I was treating the depression, medication and all of the things that I thought would help, which did, being in nature and sleeping and all of that. But yeah, it wasn't until much later that I was diagnosed with PTSD. So I've actually been through a long process of EMDR treatment, movement desensitization and reprogramming, where we actually go back and revisit those traumatic memories. And it was two kind of catalyst stories that really were the nail in the coffin for me. One was the deaths of the 8 children here just before Christmas in 2014. Something no one was expected. I just did my police rounds at lunchtime and had a good relationship with the cops, and this very kind of stoic man sergeant said to me, "Oh, we're at an incident and we've got multiple child deaths," and I just assumed it was a car accident, horrific as that would have been, but it was far worse than that. As it turns out, they'd all been murdered. So having to deal with that and play out from that in a community, and in a community like Cairns, you're connected with each other, so you can't help but feel that whole pain of the community as well. And then about 6 months later, I ended up being the first camera woman I'd seen at the Ravenswood Cafe explosion. This beautiful little town on the Tablelands. I'd been up there doing a different story, and I got the phone call, "Can you head there now? We don't know what's happened, but there's something going on." And then I arrived to this sea of ambulances and lots of white sheets up and people running around with bottles of water, and people, in various states of being burnt from an explosion. Car lost control and ran into the back of a cafe, hit 2 gas bottles, and 2 women ultimately died, someone that worked in the cafe and one of the customers. And I just remember on that day, it was the most conflicting day of my journalism career. I knew I had a job to do, but every fibre of my being just wanted to help, not to be there with a camera news gathering. But I had to do it as respectfully as I could, knowing that there is a role for journalists to play in bearing witness and recording that kind of evidence as well. But it was really, really tough. And so my mental health really started to slide after that, and started noticing some changes in myself. Not really, I'm a very social person, and I didn't really want to be social and didn't really want to be around people, and just lost a lot of the joy of my life. So yeah, it was noticeable over a period of time that I was getting less well, and then trying to help myself. Ultimately, the main thing I had to do was just to stop everything. That was the only hope that I had of survival at the time. And thankfully it worked. In the time that I had off, I thought, what can I do? I felt like the only job that I would be happy doing at that point was putting the little stickers on fruit. But I'd be pretty mindless that, I'd be contributing. I'm sure they've got a machine for that. But that's all I could come up with in terms of my productive future. But I thought volunteering I've always been a community-minded person and done fundraising and that sort of thing. So I thought I can volunteer. So there was a turtle rehab centre here in Cairns, and with lots of sick turtles, and the job was to go and vacuum up their poo and kill prawns and feed them and look after them. And I thought I can do that, so I volunteered one day a week there, and then ultimately went to Nepal and volunteered as a teacher for a month. That's another story, but it's I'd met a guy who ran a charity from Cairns, Friends of Himalayan Children, during the 2015 earthquake, and became associated with the work that they were doing in Nepal, helping kids get access to education, and particularly girls. So, I decided to go and volunteer in Scholars Village and teach journalism in a school, and it really just started me on a path of self-worth again, and being able to just get up, and there's no ego about anything. There's no expectations. You're getting up with the sun. You're having a limited existence just like everyone else, and everyone is happy. So that was like excellent therapy. And ultimately came back and went, right, I feel really connected to this. I love teaching people. This is what I need to be doing. I need to be training people. That is the thing that I love most about my journalism job. I want to do it for real now. So beginning of 2017, I started going, right, let's make a business out of this. And that's how I started.
So did you end up leaving the job that you were at that time to take that 7 months off, or did you just take some time off with the intention to go back? Did you actually go back for a while? I'd love to hear what that process was like.
Yeah, I did go back. So I was on a kind of contract when I was doing the chief of staff role. So as soon as I knew that I was not going to continue in that role, I said, look, I'm going to resign from that position. I still had my newsroom position to go back to, which I didn't really want to, but in the absence of a more suitable opportunity in the organisation, that's where I had to go back to. So, I essentially gave up my job as a chief of staff and said, please put somebody else in there so you can look after the team. Unfortunately, it took them almost that 7 months to find somebody. But yeah, I had to go back into the newsroom and being the newsroom leader. And then I was just kind of one of the staff because I went back part-time on that. You have all of the assessments, the independent assessments that they make you do. And the recommendation was that I did initially 2 days a week. And so I did that. But again, my spirits stay back. Like, it was like they hadn't told anybody what I had been through. And the first day back, the person who had been a colleague who was kind of now in charge of the newsroom, who I didn't have a great relationship with, had informed me a couple of days before that I'd be on the early shift and that they'd be away for a story and that we had a new reporter. So I was kind of coming back after 7 months of not using the technology or any of that to then be on the shift where we have to produce 2 radio news bulletin pretty early in the morning. And the day I came back, there was a cold case murder that had been solved.
Oh my gosh. Like
So,
right in the deep end.
yeah, and so that was when you're in a regional newsroom, you're not just covering the news for your own region. If it's something significant like that, then it's statewide or national news. So there's that expectation that you'll be feeding stories on those things more regularly. So that happened, and the Premier was in town, and I was also asked to train the new journo who'd only been there for a few weeks on how to do camera work. So this was all in my first morning.
Oh my gosh, which that just sounds. It sounds unreal, doesn't it, when you think about that? And especially as you said, what you'd been through there.
The newsroom in Brisbane, what I'd been through, and there was no call from HR or anyone else to say, welcome back and how are you going and is there anything we can do to support you? There was none of that. Like, it probably happened a couple of weeks afterwards, but like, it was just like, nothing is going to change with this job. So I'm glad that I'm only here 2 days a week because I can feel like it's not good for me. I had a murder maybe a month or so after it started where, I was the person on shift and I would have gone out there and I got to the front door with all the gear packed up and I just like, I cannot do this. So it was tough. My husband, about 3 months into being back, started getting me to repeat, I'm leaving the ABC, I'm leaving the ABC. And, I've always enjoyed, it was all I worked for. I really worked hard to get my career with the ABC, and I was very proud to work for this organisation. I still think it's the best that we have in terms of news gathering and quality. So it was very hard to detach from that as the thing that I'd always done and wanted to do. But the fact that it wasn't good for me anymore was sort of starting to take over a bit more. And I wasn't brave enough to leave without another job to go to. And I was only just starting to develop the kernels of the business at that point. So I had this beautiful opportunity just come out of the blue. And I do believe that the universe provides when either we're too stubborn or the stars align. And there was a job going. I was just about to go overseas, and there was a job going with Queensland Health to essentially tell good news stories. Our local health service had been in the weeds for a couple of years, and I'd reported on that a lot. And they thought, they've had no capacity to tell good news stories. They've just been in this defensive mode. So they decided to bring somebody into the team who could kind of basically unearth all the good stories and tell them, especially with video. So that was perfect. that was a perfect role to go into, and that was my ticket out of the ABC. So I had to go back to work full time at that point, and that was a bit tough. But I also felt really, really supported in that work environment. I was very honest about what I'd been through and my limitations. And I had a really good boss who was very on board with that. And yeah, I ended up shining in that role, and it became much more than the positive stuff because we had some staff changes and I ended up doing all parts of the role. And then I realized I could again. So I felt like a productive member of society and that I could still use all of my skills. And then my friend, who is an amazing editor and videographer herself, we'd met at the ABC. She had started her own video editing training business. And we started thinking, how can we put this together? Because essentially I've got the front end of the project with the scripting and the storytelling and the presenting, and she's got the camera work and the editing skills. And we thought, let's just try doing a workshop and see if this is something people want. And nearly 4 years later, it's definitely something that people want. So yeah. So yes, I did go back and ultimately decided for myself that it wasn't for me. I still feel like I get to do all of the things that I loved about my job. I still get to tell stories. I get to be creative, create things, but without that associated trauma. Because you just didn't know from day to day what you were going to get. And we had a real string of car accidents as well, really horrible things that happened, and also a lot of murders. I thought there's no way that Far North Queensland can top Central Australia for violent murders. And guess what? They did. And I had to sit in that courtroom, and you're just absorbing all of that trauma from people. And there's nothing good about it. Like it's just horrible. There's so much sadness there. So the take-home message from this is that, yes, journalists are people too, and we have feelings, and while we have some strategies for staying okay, we're only human. So we are, in many respects, like a lot of those frontline workers.
It's interesting because, I guess you wouldn't generally put journalists into that, but once you really lay that out, it's, and then sometimes where you're probably going to even be on scene before even some of the key emergency services get there as well. There's a lot to it. So I can appreciate how that would lead to PTSD over time. And I guess it's more of a complex PTSD as well, isn't it? Because it is like, it's not one incident, it's this ongoing exposure to these stressful situations. So but I really like that you did that, and obviously your husband being a very supportive person, and it sounds like he was a bit of a resilience rock for you.
Absolutely. Could not have done it without him, or my dog Billy, or my stepson Leon, who was living here at the time. They were here for me in huge spades, and my mum, who's not here, but and a close group of friends as well. So one of the things that I share with people, if they are going, because what happened was when I started sharing about what I was going through, a lot of people, like family members and friends that I hadn't heard from ages, they were sending me personal messages saying, I had no idea, and actually this has been my life for the last however long. And it was quite shocking to hear how many people in my own network were suffering in silence, not reaching out to people for help, and not getting any professional help, just kind of wallowing. And it was almost like I'd given them permission to talk about it. And I was like, how many others are there out there who are in this situation that are not talking about it, not getting help, and just thinking this is the end, this is their life, this is what they've got to deal with. I thought it was the end for me, but hung in there just enough and got the right support from my family and professionally to realize that it's just part of the journey, and there's a new chapter to write, and you can come back. I know you don't like the word come back, but it's, I do feel like I'm the best version of myself. I feel like I've got a second chance, and I'm running with it because it's such a gift. And I see that now, but I also have a lot more empathy for people who really feel like they're in that desperate stage of life where they don't really think that there's much for them. Um, and yeah, I used to think as a journalist that it was a selfish act to take your own life. And it's a very difficult thing to talk about and very sensitive for people. But yeah, until you've been there yourself, you don't understand that there feels like there's no other option. So just talk to someone, whatever. It could be a stranger, it could be a professional, uh, could be your dog. But just talk to someone, offload on somebody, and yeah, just trying to hang in there. It's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's it. It's one of those things that I always like this too shall pass. I think that nothing's permanent, but yeah, reaching out for help is definitely something that is needed. I was someone that didn't. I was terrible at it. But as you said, when you share, then it does almost give people permission. And I find that just by, speaking, sharing even posts and things like that, it's amazing then how many people then reach out, people you don't know that do reach out. So it's super important to have that support and making sure that you've got your cheerleaders around you, the people that do support and encourage you, and minimizing your exposure to the people that are going to suck the life out of you, especially if you are, if you are feeling down, the last thing you want to do is have somebody that wants to try and take you down further. Also, you mentioned about the comeback. Yeah, it's more the bounce back. There's the one that I'm not a big fan of because it just implies you keep coming back to the same place. Whereas I actually like the comeback. It's one of those things that, especially when you've been in the lows, when you can then recover, build up, and then become more resilient as a process, being exposed to such challenges, and you do, and in those ones, I think, when often you come back stronger. So there's so many opportunities in doing these things. And sometimes you can look back and go, wow, you know, some of these experiences are incredibly tough. But if even 1 second was different, then now it'd be different. I think that's something that's always good to have a reflection on as well if people are having a tough time. But I think one thing I'd just like to loop back to before we wrap up is that when you did end up taking that time out and you were really experiencing those difficulties, you were in a leadership role.
Yeah.
At that point, what advice would you give to perhaps some of our sales leaders that are listening? What advice would you give them if they find themselves in that situation? Like, what would you do differently now, knowing what you know?
Cut myself some more slack, probably, because you put a lot of pressure on yourself when you're in a leadership role, and you feel like you've got to be there for everybody else. You're the gatekeeper. You're the support person for others, and that is a lot of pressure to put on yourself. So, delegate what you can. This was initially something that I was reluctant to do because I didn't want to put pressure on my colleagues. I thought this is better than it all falling in a hole and nothing happening and then everybody being inconvenienced. So reaching out to others who can take some of that pressure off you from a delegation point of view is some advice I would give. And yeah, reaching out to a mentor. If there's no one sort of above you that you can talk to, then a mentor who's in a similar role in the same industry or a different industry, or somebody that you've had some coaching from. I mean, these are good people to just bounce off and say, look, am I crazy, or and hopefully they'll sort of give you some helpful advice or strategies about what to do as well. And the whole putting pressure on yourself, it's easier said than done to say don't put pressure on yourself. We wouldn't be in leadership roles unless we kind of enjoyed that positive stress of taking on challenges and tackling them and getting good outcomes. So it is a hard one to sort of say, oh, just switch that off. But just surround yourself with positive people as well. I think that's a good one. And I'm not saying surround yourself by sycophants who are just going to constantly give you praise, because that's not what life is all about. But, we've all got people in our lives that sort of pump up our tires, and they're just naturally beautiful people. And I think myself, I've become more conscious of having those types of people, positive people in my life, rather than people that are likely to feed into any kind of negativity and narrative that I've got going on myself as well. So yeah, surround yourself with positive people, delegate, and just give yourself a little bit of a break. Remind yourself of things that you are doing well and achieving. And as you say, this too shall pass. Sometimes it's we have a good saying in our house: if we're having a really crap day, and we do, like I still have periods of being incredibly down. It was pretty flat this weekend, to be honest. But we just say it's just a day. You're not having to write off a whole week or a whole month or a whole year and feed into that negativity. It's just a day. So tomorrow's different. Something else will change. We might change it. Something else might happen. But if we just kind of compartmentalize and go, right, that's done. Tomorrow's a new opportunity. Let's go in with fresh eyes and an open mind, and things may just be different.
Some good advice there, and a lot of it parallels to the resilience stuff that I talk about as well. And there's the resilience rocks, those foundational things, the things that we use that actually build the strong foundation of resilience. There is one other aspect to the resilience rocks, and that is a musical twist, so the rock twist. So with that, I've actually got a playlist on Spotify called Resilience Rocks. And what that is filled with is music to actually shift your energy, shift your state. And I'm sure that given some of the things that you've done over the years, that you would have some music or a song in particular that you would play in order to do that for yourself, to shift your energy. So what is your number one go-to song to do that for you, to get you pumped up and get the energy moving?
It has to be Walking on Sunshine, Katrina and the Waves. It was the song that I first heard in a radio station on a school visit to 2WS in Western Sydney when I think I was 9 then as well. So no wonder all this kind of journalism stuff was going on. But yeah, I remember going to the radio station and the announcer was playing that song, and it's always stuck with me. And it's my happy song. And as I say, it's a bit of an anthem. When you're having a bit of a low point, you can't help but feel good when you think about that song.
Awesome. Well, I will consult the playlist. If it's not already on there, I will add that there for you. So thank you so much for coming and sharing so much and so vulnerably about your experiences, with dealing with some of these traumas and the challenges that came with that. And also just the great advice that you've shared, particularly for people in leadership roles that may be experiencing some similar challenges as well. So it's been awesome to have you share so openly. And if people would like to connect with you beyond the conversation today, where is the best place for them to do that?
Probably on LinkedIn, I would say. So you find me, Kirsty Nancarrow, on LinkedIn. If you'd like to connect with me on the business side, it's Emotion Video Training and Production. So Emotion Video AU on all of the platforms, if you'd like to reach out that way. I also have a YouTube channel, which is Kirsty Nancarrow. And we have an emotion video one as well. I'm in all the places and would love to hear from people, even if it's somebody who I don't know. I'm always happy to connect and have a chat around resilience or anything else that you want to chat about.
Amazing. So thanks again for joining us. And I encourage people to reach out and connect with Kirsty. And until the next episode, thank you so much for joining us today on Resilience Rocks Sales. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us again this week on Resilience Rocks Sales. Don't just listen though, take action. The best sales professionals are always learning. Head over to resiliencerocks.com now to go backstage and get the resources mentioned today to help rock your sales goals.